You can attend every sacred gathering, visit temples, churches, or mosques daily, and recite holy words by heart. But unless you embody the essence behind those words, no religion, ritual, or sermon will truly awaken your spirit. We live in a time where spirituality is often performed, not practiced, where faith is worn like jewelry, shiny on the surface, empty underneath. Symbols are cherished, but substance is often ignored. People raise their hands to the heavens, but rarely raise the standard of their own behavior. Ancient teachings from the Bible, the Gita, the Quran, or the Tao are never just meant to be repeated. They were meant to be lived with intention and action. There is timeless wisdom in these texts, but it demands responsibility, not just reverence. Until you accept that, you can sit in the front row of every sanctuary and still feel lost inside. Faith is not a shield to hide behind, it's a compass to follow. If you ignore the direction it points to, you remain stuck, regardless of how many candles you light or verses you recite. Belief without movement becomes a spiritual illusion, comforting mask that requires no real transformation. In every tradition, this truth echoes loud and clear. Belief doesn't change, your behavior does. You can quote scriptures fluently, speak of love and light eloquently, wear the garments of devotion. But if your life choices don't mirror your words, then your spirit is merely sleepwalking. The elders of old understood this. Faith was never passive. It was the fire that pushed people forward to help, to give, to act justly. Your voice was meant to speak truth, your hands to heal, your life to radiate light. The book of James plainly declares that faith without action is lifeless. Krishna says that action is superior to inaction. In every spiritual path, the message repeats, belief is the seed, but effort is the water, the sunlight, the soil. It's the nurturing that leads to the bloom. Yet today, many believe that good thoughts or spiritual gatherings are enough. That sharing quotes, attending services, or wearing symbols qualifies as transformation. But authentic growth asks more. It calls for forgiveness when you've been wronged, forgiving when it costs, and for serving when it's inconvenient. It demands that you stand for truth when silence would be easier, that you live with integrity, even when no one applauds. Action is the evidence of belief. Without it, spirituality becomes performance, stage act of pretty phrases with no depth, no anchor, no lasting impact. Ancient wisdom invites us to stop performing and start practicing. It challenges us to align our walk with our talk. Because until your values shape your choices, your faith is just decoration. Transformation is not an idea to discipline. It's who you are when tested, when no one is watching, when the path is hard. It shows in choosing patience over panic, honesty over convenience, responsibility over excuses. That is the difference between acting spiritual and becoming spiritual. So if you preach peace but provoke conflict, your belief is fiction. If you claim love but harbor resentment, your devotion is hollow. If you talk about growth but resist accountability, your path is a performance. Ancient teachings don't ask how long you've been religious. They ask how willing you are to be real. Because faith isn't a lecture, it's a life. And until your actions carry the weight of your beliefs, your soul is still waiting for you to show up. Alignment matters more than ritual. No sacred chant, no fasting, no grand display can cover up when your own soul knows you're off course. And the sacred wisdom from all traditions makes this truth undeniable. The divine isn't moved by performance. The divine is moved by integrity. Lighting incense, fasting, bowing, reciting they're meaningful only when backed by a life of truth. But when used to avoid change or mask inner conflict, they become distractions, not disciplines. Too many hide behind rituals instead of using them as reflections. They check off religious tasks, hoping for grace, while avoiding the deep work of heart, mind, and behavior. But the ancient scrolls were never scripts for spiritual theater. They were blueprints for inner rebuilding. The prophets, sages, and monks didn't live by hollow routines. They walked in radical truth, even when it was uncomfortable. Jesus didn't turn over tables because people were praying wrong. He did it because they had corrupted sacred space for personal gain. The Quran speaks of those who pray but neglect the soul of the prayer. The Torah warns of honoring God with lips while the heart stays distant. The Vedas speak of rituals done without sincerity as seeds scattered on barren ground. These teachings are not metaphors, they're mirrors. You cannot memorize your way to depth. You must live your way into it. It takes courage to confront the lies you tell yourself, the masks you wear, and the parts of your life ruled by fear or pride. It's easy to bow your head in public while your private life is ruled by ego, greed, or envy. But the path of the ancients never measured you by public ritual, it measured you by private integrity. Do you return what doesn't belong to you? Speak truth when it's inconvenient. Defend what is right, even when it costs you. That's the real alter your daily decisions. Because when you betray your conscience, no amount of worship can wash it away. When you twist the truth to protect your image, no prayer can undo that fracture in trust. When you know better but choose comfort over courage, you're not being spiritual, you're being selective. Truth is not an idea to admire, it's a direction to follow. And when you silence that inner compass long enough, you don't just lose your way, you lose yourself. Stop confusing holiness with habits. Stop thinking sacredness lives in temples and forgets the world around you. The divine isn't swayed by songs if your life echoes silence toward those in need. What matters most is how obedient you are to the truth your soul already recognizes. Rituals may spark you, but truth shapes you. And that is what every sacred path has always tried to teach. Not to make you religious, but to make you real. Because in the end, it's not about how many times you bowed your head or how many mantras you spoke. It's about whether you lived with courage, honesty, and love. True power doesn't come from how life treats you, it comes from how you respond. Every sacred tradition, every ancient teaching, echoes this truth again and again. You are not defined by what happens to you. You are defined by what you choose to do next. Life will test you. You will face betrayal, injustice, and loss. These are not punishments, they are invitations. Invitations to rise above, to refine your character, to awaken the deeper strength within you. But no scripture promises comfort. What they offer is clarity, the clarity that the storm does not break you unless you surrender your center. Look closely at the earliest stories. Adam and Eve weren't cast out because they were tempted, they were cast out because they shifted blame. Jesus didn't say storms wouldn't come. He asked, will you build on rock or sand? Krishna didn't tell Arjuna to avoid the battlefield, he told him to step forward with purpose and duty. Muhammad taught that even in the face of hardship, your integrity must remain whole. All paths return to the same truth. The strength of your spirit lies in your willingness to take ownership. Blame is seductive. It gives you an easy escape. It lets you point outward so you don't have to look inward. But that's not power, that's paralysis. The moment you say, they made me like this, you've handed your future to someone else. The moment you say, it's not my fault, you've chosen to stay stuck. Responsibility is not about guilt, it's about reclaiming your power. It's understanding that while you can't always control what comes your way, you always control how you face it. And that is where your freedom lives. That's why every spiritual journey leads you to the mirror. Because transformation begins with your own reflection. It begins when you stop waiting for someone else to change and start changing yourself. It begins when you choose peace even without apology. When you stop grieving the past and begin building the future. It begins the moment you say, no matter what they did, I refuse to abandon my soul. Responsibility is the bridge between suffering and strength. Without it, you react to life. With it, you create life. when you own your wounds, your reactions, and even your flaws, you step into a kind of power that cannot be taken away from you. This is why personal responsibility is not just a mindset, it's a spiritual discipline. It demands humility too. See your part in the pain, and courage to change your part in the story. But once you commit to it, you stop being a victim and become the author. That is what the ancient paths teach, not how to escape struggle, but how to rise through it. Not how to avoid responsibility, but how to embrace it as the gateway to awakening. You can't pray your way out of what you behaved your way into. Prayer was never meant to replace action. It was meant to guide it. Prayer is not an escape. Hatchet is alignment. A sacred dialogue meant to bring your soul back into harmony with your choices. Yet too many people misuse prayer as a way to delay transformation. They want forgiveness without reform, relief without responsibility. But ancient wisdom says otherwise. The seeds you sow will determine your harvest, not as punishment, but as consequence. Prayer is powerful, but not if it's used as a shortcut around your own integrity. You can't plant chaos and expect peace to bloom. You can't mistreat others, abandon your purpose, or deceive yourself and then expect a holy moment to erase it all. That's not transformation, that's avoidance. The wisdom of the ages is simple. Alignment is the true power. Not apology without change, not regret without redirection. Discipline is divine because it protects you from becoming a slave to your impulses. That's why when you hear that small voice inside the whisper that says, "Don't go there," or "This is not for you," you must listen. Because once you ignore your conscience, no amount of spiritual ritual can undo the damage that follows. Prayer is not about bargaining with the divine. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to bargain. It's not about convincing God to bless what you refuse to change. It's about allowing that inner truth to reshape you, so you can bless your own life with your actions. That's why Jesus didn't just say, "Pray." He said, "Go and change." He didn't just offer mercy, he offered a path. Because too many mistake grace for a loophole, as if they can continue in dysfunction and then kneel in hope of a reset button. But you can't outsource your discipline. You can't delegate your inner work. Prayer must partner with practice. Faith must meet follow-through. Otherwise, you're not growing spiritually. You're just avoiding spiritually. You don't need louder prayers. You need clearer patterns. You don't need longer devotions. You need deeper decisions. The ancient path doesn't call for perfection, but it does demand participation. You must meet your potential halfway. Show up with commitment, with consistency, with choices that honor what you claim to believe. Because what you got yourself into with behavior, you must get yourself out of with behavior. From the inside out. Once you begin to live aligned, when your conduct matches your convictions, something shifts. You realize that prayer becomes more than words, it becomes transformation, not because it changes heaven, but because it changes you. The real miracle is not in avoiding the outcome, it's in becoming the kind of person who no longer creates the chaos. But that only happens when you stop begging for rescue and start aligning with responsibility. When you stop asking for relief from patterns you refuse to release. Discipline becomes the sacred filter through which your life flows. It's how you stop breaking what prayer was never meant to carry. When you live recklessly, ignoring your own higher knowing, you walk a path that no chant or ritual can reverse unless you do the inner work. Because real prayer is not performance, it is permission. It is saying, "Correct me so I may correct my life." You can't manipulate divine law. You can only align with it. And once you do, once you allow that inner order to guide you, you find a new kind of power, quiet, clear, unshakable. A life no longer shaped by desperation, but defined by direction. That's what every sacred text teaches, not escape, but embodiment. Not inspiration, but implementation. The power is not in asking for light. The power is in becoming the light. Character is the true measure of spirituality. Not how often you speak about faith, but how you live when no one's listening. Not how many verses you've memorized, but how you treat people who can offer you nothing in return. You can sing loudly in worship, but if your words wound behind closed doors, the song loses its power. You can quote sacred texts fluently, but if your actions lack compassion, the truth hasn't touched your heart. Spirituality isn't defined by how you behave in holy spaces. It's revealed in how you carry yourself when you're tired, triggered, or tempted. God is not impressed by noise, he is moved by nature. The nature of your heart, the consistency of your decisions, the depth of your integrity. Shouting praises in the sanctuary means little if your everyday speech is filled with bitterness. Leading devotionals has no meaning if you manipulate behind the scenes. Ancient wisdom speaks clearly. Your fruits reveal your faith. Jesus said, "You will know them by their fruits, not by their followers, their rituals, or their religious titles, but by their character." The Bhagavad Gita teaches that a wise person is steady in adversity and selfless in strength. The Quran reminds us that God knows what lies hidden in our hearts. The Torah teaches that the highest command is to live justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. These truths are not suggestions, they are blueprints. They teach that it's not your belief system that defines you, it's your behavior when tested. The spiritual life is not determined by emotion, but by ethics. Not by what you say you believe, but by how you choose to live when it costs you something. This is where alignment becomes sacred. When your conduct mirrors your convictions, your life becomes a living testimony. When you honor your word even when it's inconvenient, protect another's name when it's easier to gossip, choose honesty when lying would be simpler. This is what reveals your true devotion. These are not simply ethical checkboxes, they are spiritual mirrors. Because the truest form of holiness isn't in moments of awe, it's in moments of action. The ancients taught that the greatest form of worship is right living. Holiness isn't something you perform, it's something you practice. It's not a single act, but a lifestyle that carries spiritual weight. Your character is the bridge between your beliefs and your behavior. Without that bridge, your faith becomes fragile, disconnected, performative. But when your values travel from your mouth to your actions, your life becomes sacred ground. Without character, spirituality is noise. With character, every choice becomes a sermon. Every decision becomes sacred, and your very presence reflects the divine you claim to follow. So if you want to deepen your spiritual path, don't just attend more rituals, develop more discipline. Don't just raise your hands, raise your standards. Because in the economy of the sacred, charisma means nothing without character, and the kingdom is not somewhere outside of you, it lives within. You will keep chasing peace outside until you realize it begins inside. And this is not metaphor. It is the cornerstone of every sacred teaching. Jesus taught that the kingdom of God is within you. The Upanishads declare that your true self, the Atman, is one with the Absolute. The Quran says the divine is closer than your own veins. The Buddha said that truth is awakened from within, not bestowed from above. Every tradition, every text, points to the same truth. The sacred isn't something you visit, it's something you embody. And yet, we keep searching for God in buildings, rituals, and institutions, believing something external will finally make us feel whole. But what if everything you've been seeking is already inside of you, waiting to be awakened, waiting for your permission to rise? What if the peace you've prayed for is trapped behind the doors you've refused to open? What if your wholeness has been waiting for you to stop looking outward and start building inward? Ancient wisdom doesn't call you to outsource salvation, it calls you home. It doesn't say holiness depends on titles or locations, says, you are the sanctuary. You are the sacred space, the altar, the light. And until you treat yourself that way, you will live beneath your purpose. Building your inner temple is not complicated, but it is intentional. It means making space in your mind for clarity, in your heart for compassion, and in your life for consistency. It means protecting your thoughts the way monks protect sacred grounds. It means removing bitterness, jealousy, blame. These aren't just feelings, they're clutter, and they keep you from hearing the voice of truth that already lives inside of you. It means facing your reflection, not with shame, but with honesty, because the divine doesn't live in stained glass. It lives in your breath, in your conscience, in your courage to grow. Too many feel lost because they think of spirituality as geography, as if God lives in one place, but not in their pain, as if truth is in scripture, but not in their struggle. But the sacred is never separate from you. It's in your choices, in your awareness, in your alignment. You carry it with you wherever you go. The moment you realize that, your life begins to shift. You begin to walk differently, speak differently. You no longer trade your worth for approval. Your peace is no longer held hostage by opinion. Your purpose is no longer negotiable, because now you know. The sacred was never far. It was waiting in your stillness. And now that you've come home to yourself, you've found the one thing you were searching for all along: presence. But be mindful, ego is the shadow of awakening. It disguises itself as insight. It convinces you that knowing the truth is enough, that quoting wisdom is the same as living it, that pride can wear the robes of humility. This is the trap. You can be religious and still ruled by ego. You can speak beautifully and still act selfishly. You can attend every gathering and still miss the entire message. Ego is subtle. It makes you seek validation, not virtue. It wants applause, not alignment. It compares, it competes, it pretends. But the spirit seeks none of that. It seeks to serve. True wisdom doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need a title or a stage. It shows up in silence, in patience, in grace. The deeper you grow spiritually, the less you need to prove it, because holiness isn't in how you're seen. It's in how you show up when no one's looking. In your ability to listen, to forgive, to grow. The ego clings to being right. The soul longs to be real, and the journey toward truth requires one thing more than anything else: humility. The willingness to say, I am still learning. The strength to admit you don't know it all. The grace to know that your flaws are invitations, not disqualifications. The ego resists. The soul receives. And the moment you choose surrender over status, you begin to feel lighter, stronger, more whole. Because transformation doesn't come from stacking knowledge. It comes from releasing pride, from letting go of the illusion that you're already there. You don't climb toward enlightenment. You clear space for it. You make room. You strip away what no longer serves you. And in that empty space, the light can finally enter. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped blocking it. Ego may impress people, but only humility invites the divine. You are accountable for the light you've received. Once truth touches your spirit, once your conscience stirs, your awareness grows. You can no longer claim ignorance. Every time you ignore what you now know, you're not just delaying growth. You're resisting your own evolution. Ancient teachings are unambiguous. Knowledge comes with weight. Jesus said, "To whom much is given, much will be expected." The Quran warns against turning away after guidance has come. The Torah distinguishes between innocent error and willful defiance. The Gita reminds us that the soul suffers not just from confusion, but from knowingly choosing what dishonors its higher calling. All paths agree once you've seen the light. You are responsible for how you walk in it. And yet, how often do we say, it's not the right time, or maybe later, or I'll work on that someday. But while you postpone your change, you also postpone your peace. While you make excuses, you extend your suffering. The light doesn't fade, you simply turn away from it. Your spirit doesn't forget what it knows. Just because your ego isn't ready. That's why spiritual awakening can feel uncomfortable. It pulls you toward alignment and away from avoidance. It shines a light on the version of yourself that clings to comfort, convenience, and denial. You can lie to others with words, but you cannot lie to the wisdom within you. That inner voice never stops whispering. It keeps calling, nudging, reminding you of what's right. The longer you avoid it, the heavier life becomes. Not because the truth disappears, but because the burden of resistance grows. Avoiding truth never makes life easier. It makes it heavier. You carry guilt, repeat harmful patterns, and stay trapped in cycles that were meant to be broken. You live beneath your calling not because you're unworthy, but because you're unwilling. But the moment you choose to, step into the light, to live what you know, even in the smallest ways you begin to unlock a different future. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be faithful to what you know. That's how transformation starts. With one courageous decision, one honest action, one choice that says, I'm ready to live aligned. That is the sacred cost of truth. It doesn't ask for ceremony. It asks for consistency. And the more light you carry, the more responsibility you hold, not to impress others, but to honor the gift of awareness. Love is the highest commandment. Every other law hangs on it. At the heart of every prophet's message, every scripture, every spiritual tradition is one simple truth. Love one another. Jesus said it plainly, love your neighbor as yourself. The Buddha taught boundless compassion. The Prophet Muhammad declared that true belief is shown through love for others. The Torah commands love as the core of divine obedience. The Gita teaches selfless service rooted in unity. Love is the central thread woven through every path. And yet, we've often replaced it with judgment, with hierarchy, with ego. We've memorized doctrine and forgotten kindness. We've defended rules while ignoring the suffering right in front of us. But love is the measure. If your faith doesn't lead you to love more deeply, serve more humbly, forgive more freely, then it is not expanding your spirit. It's just expanding your pride. Spiritual maturity is not proven by how loudly you proclaim your beliefs, but by how gently you treat those who do not share them. Love dismantles the barriers ego builds. It sees the sacred in the stranger, the worth in the overlooked, the light even in those we're tempted to reject. The ones who walk in love need no defense for their beliefs, because their lives become the message. Love is not weakness. It's the highest form of strength. It's not passive, it's powerful. It confronts injustice, dissolves resentment, outlasts fear. It stretches you beyond self-interest. It challenges your ego. It invites you to act with grace, even when grace feels undeserved. Love is a discipline. It's choosing compassion over comparison, humility over superiority, presence over performance. It's remembering that every soul you encounter is carrying pain you cannot see, and choosing to meet that pain with presence, not punishment. This is the path of the awakened, the way of the prophets, the essence of every sacred tradition. Love is the fulfillment of every law, the true proof of enlightenment, the highest alignment with the divine. All else, titles, garments, ceremonies, credentials, is just commentary. These things may support the journey, but they are not the destination. And the moment we place anything above love, we've already stepped off the path. If your beliefs lead you to division, superiority, or hatred, they are not guiding you to the divine. They are guiding you back into ego. But if your faith expands your ability to love, to understand, to uplift, then you're not just studying religion, you're embodying truth. Love is the law that transcends culture, creed, and language. It is the sacred fire that melts the armor of the ego. And when you walk in that fire, you don't just reflect God, you become the revelation. But love, like wisdom, only works when you live it, because truth is not magic, it is a mirror. Sacred texts are not spells, they are invitations. They only transform you when you participate in them with your life. The Bible, the Quran, the Gita, the Tao, they were not written to be admired. They were written to be lived. They are not information, they are transformation manuals. And transformation doesn't happen through exposure. It happens through application. You can read about forgiveness all day, but only forgiving will free you. You can study discipline, but only discipline will shape you. You can talk about love, but only loving will heal you. Spirituality is not an event, it's a practice. It's not about how inspired you feel on Sundays, about the choices you make on Monday. It's not found in dramatic moments, but in the small, unseen decisions that no one applauds. That's where the real work is. The truth doesn't change you because it's ancient or poetic. It changes you because you practice it imperfectly, consistently, sincerely. You don't become transformed just by being near the truth. You become transformed when the truth becomes part of your daily rhythm. That's the difference between association and alignment. Association says, I know that quote. Alignment says, I live that truth. So stop waiting for life to shift just because you've read the right books or repeated the right mantras. Understand this, change isn't passive. It doesn't happen through osmosis. It happens through obedience to the wisdom you already know. You don't need more sermons. You need more follow-through. You don't need more information. You need more embodiment. Because wisdom only works when you work it in the end. Religion is only as powerful as the truth you're willing to live. Not just the truth you recite. Salvation doesn't arrive through routine. It doesn't come through repetition or reverence alone. It shows up through the courage to embody what you already know, to walk in integrity, to silence the ego, to choose love over judgment, and to build the inner sanctuary where the sacred always dwelled. You can sit in the most sacred space, wear the most symbolic robes, and chant the most ancient names. But if your actions betray your values, if your heart is closed, if your life is out of sync with the truth you proclaim, then your religion becomes a performance, not a path. And the divine is not looking for actors. The divine seeks participation. The sacred isn't waiting on a mountaintop or in a scroll. It's waiting in your next decision, your next word, your next moment of compassion, your next act of humility. This is the truth that ancient wisdom still whispers to every seeker, that the divine is not found in performance, but in presence. That power is not something you chase, it's something you unlock by living aligned. The path to salvation was never about memorization. It was about embodiment. It has always been about living in harmony with the truth already etched in your soul. Every sacred tradition, every prophet, every text across cultures and centuries has been echoing this. The transformation you seek begins not in temples, but in choices. Not in chance, but in character. Not in ritual, but in responsibility. You are the temple. You are the altar. You are the mirror of the sacred. And until you honor that within yourself, you will remain a stranger in your own spiritual home. Your life is not waiting for more signs. It's waiting for more alignment. And alignment doesn't require perfection. It only asks for honesty, for sincerity, for daily steps, small, humble, and real. Stop asking the divine to do for you what you refuse to do for yourself. Stop treating grace like a loophole and growth like a burden. The sacred life is not something you get around to. It's something you commit to, moment by moment. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room, just the most faithful to your truth. You don't need to explain your faith to everyone. Just let your life speak, because a quiet example is louder than a loud contradiction. Transformation isn't grand, it's granular. It's in the moment you pause before reacting, the breath you take before judging, the courage you show when fear would be easier. It's in how you speak to a child, how you forgive a friend, how you face your own reflection when no one else is watching. That's where your real power lives, not in the spotlight, but in the silence. That's where truth becomes real, in theories, but in action. Your daily choices are the bricks of your inner temple. Every time you choose patience over ego, service over self-interest, Honesty over convenience, you lay down another sacred stone. And when your internal structure is built strong, the storms outside can't shake you. Because now, your identity isn't rooted in performance, it's rooted in presence. The ego fades, the masks fall, and what's left is peace, not because the world changed, but because you did. You stopped waiting for external approval. You stopped depending on applause. You stopped outsourcing your worth to anything temporary, and you came home to your own soul. This is the spiritual path. This is what every sacred voice tried to point to. Not more religious activity, but more realness. Not public ritual, but private truth. Because in the end, it won't be how much you memorized. It will be how much you loved. Not how many ceremonies you attended, but how many people you lifted. Not how spiritual you looked, but how much your daily life reflected what you claimed to believe. Faith, at its core, is not an event, it is a way of being, and being is not static. It is built every day. The sacred does not live in theory. It lives in your practice. So if you want spiritual strength, build it. If you want peace, protect it with discipline. If you want integrity, practice it when it's least convenient. Your growth will not come from knowing more. It will come from choosing better. The divine has already placed the blueprint within you. The teachings have already been given. The direction has already been made clear. What remains is whether you will walk it. Don't seek comfort over clarity. Don't mistake noise for truth. Don't wait for a voice from the clouds when the whisper in your chest is already guiding you. Listen, and then act. Because wisdom doesn't work until you work it. The sacred doesn't shape you until you shape your life around it. Faith is not measured by moments of inspiration, but by moments of integrity. You are not being asked to be flawless. You are being asked to be faithful, to show up, to be real, to align. There is no spiritual shortcut, no bypass around the mirror, no way to substitute performance for presence. But when you choose alignment, even in quiet, ordinary moments, your life begins to shift. Your energy becomes different. Your presence carries weight, not because you are trying to be spiritual, but because you are finally being true. That is the essence of every sacred path. That is the invitation. To stop performing and start practicing. To stop waiting and start becoming. To stop admiring wisdom from a distance and start embodying it from within. Because when you do, your life becomes the sermon. Your presence becomes the prayer, and your every step becomes a sacred offering. This is the final truth. You don't need to chase enlightenment. You only need to remove what blocks it. The sacred is not waiting on the outside. It is already within you.